This is one of the oldest known games that is still played around the world today, and I love to customize it. I've made a whole bunch of different boards with different themes, and it's time to start a new one. Let's see if you can guess what it is. Welcome to part 1 of making a new mancala board. So to start, I made a bunch of paper stars and then got them covered with clay. I start by pre-cutting a bunch of coins of clay, and then when I'm ready to use them, I roll them out a little bit more and then get them wet with the sponge, put them on the paper star, and then cover the paper star with clay. After wrapping the star, there's just a bunch of smoothing to get it looking nice and perfect. Now again, we are making a mancala set, so I need 48 pieces total, and this is just piece 1. There's going to be 2 different shapes. So once I had all the stars done, it was time to move on to the second shape. I did this by rolling out a little snake of clay and then cutting it into even-ish pieces. Once I had those balls made, I booped them with the end of my tool to give them this nice texture. Any guesses what the theme is? Well, see you tomorrow for underglaze. It took 2 days, but we finally have all 48 pieces of our mancala set made. Welcome back to part 2 of making a custom mancala set. So I asked y'all to guess what the theme of this board was going to be with these pieces, and most people said something space related. But I've actually already done that, as you can see here, and all of my mancala boards are one of one, meaning that once I've done a design, I'm not going to remake it. While the pieces are super similar, they are completely different sets, and I have a feeling that underglaze is going to lead y'all to the answer. So I started by painting all of the circles black, and then separating the stars into 4 categories because I wanted 4 different colors. As you can see, there are a lot more than 24 stars here, and that is because I'm going to have an accompanying blind bag series with these, so that way you can just get a few of the pieces for yourself if that's something you want. But I have green, yellow, pink, and white stars, and then I started putting eyes on some of the black balls. Do you know what they are now? If you guessed soot sprites and their little candies, you would be correct. So while these Japanese, Portuguese candies are originally more spiky, obviously I love stars, so we're doing stars and soot sprites. Once I got them all underglazed, I loaded them up on this little terracotta drip tray and got them taken out to the kiln so that way we can get them cooked. Over the next 8 hours, these pieces will climb to about 1900 degrees, and then they will spend the next 8 hours after that cooling back to room temperature. The stars and little balls are ready to be glazed. Welcome back to part 3 of making a ceramic mancala set. So, got the pieces out of the kiln, they did wonderfully in their bisque fire, and started glazing. The white stars got 3 coats of white glaze, and then all of the colored stars got their Pepto-Bismol baths. I do this by putting a glue dot at the end of a dowel rod and then dipping them in. After I got all the stars glazed, it was time for soot sprites, and I did a glossy glaze just for the eyes because I wanted to try to make these pieces matte. So got out my matte glaze and then dipped them in and then used my hands to kind of spin them around to get any excess off. Now, I did have concerns that this white glaze was going to make the soot sprites cloudy, so I actually made an additional 24 soot sprites so that way I could just do these with the normal glossy glaze. Here they are before their bisque fire, and then here they are getting glazed. As you can see, that nice cup of Pepto-Bismol. Then it was time to load them, and again, I just don't paint the bottoms. That's how they can sit on the kiln shelf. Here is the fully loaded kiln, and if you notice, I don't know what I was thinking when I loaded these stars. Will it work? I don't know, but they are essentially balancing on a high fire wire that is just kind of split in half. You can see it really well right there. And then some of them are just hanging normally on a hook, and then all of the balls sitting politely on their little kiln paper. But wait, there's more. There's actually more stars under the kiln shelf on a bee tree, but fingers crossed that this glaze fire goes well. Yesterday we put our ceramic soot sprite and star candy pieces in the kiln, and it's finally time to open it up. So as you can see, it went wonderfully. Nothing fell, nothing moved. Everything went perfect. The balls didn't roll, the stars didn't fall. So I got everyone out of the kiln and they took a shower, and then I added an extra top coat to the matte pieces because I wanted them to look a little bit fuzzy. And then here is the board. No, something's not right. Oh right, the board. So ran to the studio and got the board out and started designing it. So that starts with just a bunch of sketching to decide where I want pieces and grabbing the matching colors for my pieces. By some miracle, I had Posca markers of all of the colors I needed, so that was perfect. For the board design, I ended up going with a star and soot sprite repeating pattern in the actual holes, and then at the end goals, there's 2 soot sprites fighting over a star candy, and then throughout the entire board, I also added little tiny soot sprites and star candies all over the board. I wanted to give it the feel of the scene from Spirited Away, where they're all so happy to be fed their little candies. So this is what we got, and then I had to add some details like the glares in their eyes and glares onto the actual pieces. Then once it was done, I walked it outside because we have to give this thing a nice coat of clear polyurethane just to make sure everything's nice and locked in and you won't have any problems with fading. Here it is after the poly, and here are our glazed star candies. Then we have our matte soot sprites, which are my personal favorite. And then here they are compared to the shiny soot sprites. I'd love to know which one you prefer, but here are the shiny ones, and here's how those sound. And here's the board. So I'm really happy with how the set came out. I really think it has that very playful, cute Studio Ghibli vibe, while also being very me. And yeah, thanks for coming along, and I'd love to hear what y'all want to see next.